Barry the bear was a very fine fellow, with fur as soft as a fluffy marshmallow. He lived in a house at the edge of the wood, and his days were happy, and his life was good. But Barry the bear had a big, bubbly dream, a most peculiar and wonderful scheme. He didn't want to catch the biggest fish in the stream or climb the tallest tree, as it might seem. No, Barry's one wish, his heart's true desire, was to blow a bubble that would float ever higher. A bubble so big, so grand and so round, it would be the best bubble the world had ever found. So out in his garden beneath the warm sun, Barry decided his work had begun. He gathered his things with a twitch of his nose, from the tips of his ears to the pads of his toes. He found a big bucket, a shiny red pot, and everything else that he thought he had got. He brought out a bottle of dishwashing soap, which filled his big furry heart with much hope. He found a jar of honey, all sticky and sweet, a truly magnificent golden treat. "This will make my bubble strong," Barry declared, feeling quite brave and completely prepared. He poured in the soap with a glug and a gurgle, which made a sound like a happy purple snurgle. Then came the honey, a slow, gooey river, which made his fuzzy brown tummy quiver. He added some water from the garden hosepipe, and then a whole handful of berries, all ripe. "For color!" he shouted with a waggle and dance. He couldn't just leave such a great thing to chance. He stirred it all up with a very long stick, giving the mixture a flick and a lick. "It tastes a bit funny," he said with a frown, "but it might be the best bubble mix in the town." With his special concoction all ready to go, Barry found a big hoop to help with the show. It was an old ring from a game he once played, a perfect round shape that was expertly made. He dipped the hoop deep in the gloopy goo mix, which was full of his clever and wonderful tricks. He lifted it out, ever so slow, and watched a shimmering film start to grow. He took a deep breath, puffed out his cheeks wide, with all of his barely excitement inside. "Here goes nothing," he whispered with glee. "A bubble for you, and a bubble for me." His first gentle puff made a bubble so small, it wasn't impressive or special at all. It popped with a tiny little, and vanished right there, in a sparkly sniff. "Oh dear," said Barry, "that wasn't quite right. I must blow with more of my bearly might." So he took a much bigger breath, deep and grand, and blew on the hoop that he held in his hand. This time a bubble emerged, fat and green, the wobbliest bubble you ever have seen. It jiggled and wiggled and shook in the air, a big glob of jelly beyond all compare. It floated a bit, then it let out a noise like a frog who had eaten his chirp. Not one to give up, Barry tried it once more, this time adding glitter he found by the door. "For sparkle," he cried with a grin and a wink. "It's just the right magic, I really do think." He stirred in the glitter, which twinkled and spun, then dipped his hoop in, for more bubbly fun. He blew with a huff and a puff and a wheeze, and a bubble shot out, riding the breeze. This one was different, it whizzed all around making a zippy fizz-popping sound. It raced past a flower and zoomed past a bee, then popped with a for the whole world to see. Barry laughed out loud, this was better and better. Each bubble was like a fun floating letter. One bubble he blew was a long silly sausage that wriggled and squiggled and looked like a cabbage. It made a low hum, a deep sound as it drifted along close to the ground. Another he made was a cluster of 3, all stuck together for everyone to see. They giggled and bounced like 3 peas in a pod, giving the ladybugs a friendly nod. Each pop and each fizz, each whiz and each whir was music to the ears of the happy young bear. He felt he was close now, he knew it was true, his recipe just needed something new. He looked at his honey, so golden and thick, and thought, I must give it a much bigger lick. He poured in the rest of the jar, every drop he knew in his heart that he just couldn't stop. He stirred it all in with a powerful sweep, his magical secret he'd carefully keep. He dipped his hoop in, the big bubbly brew, and knew this next bubble would be shiny and new. "This is the one," Barry said with a chesty big puff. "This one will surely be big enough." With all of his might and a rumbling roar, a breath bigger than any he'd taken before, Barry blew. The bubble began as a small, gentle sphere, but it grew and it grew, chasing away all his fear. It grew past the size of a rosy red apple. It grew past the size of the church's high chapel. It shimmered with colors of pink, green and gold, a beautiful story just waiting to be told. The bubble swelled up to the size of a shed, with swirls of honey and glittery thread. It wobbled and swayed, but it did not go pop. It just kept on growing, and wouldn't quite stop. Barry held onto his hoop with both paws, ignoring all sensible, logical laws. The bubble was now bigger than his little house, as quiet and grand as a sleepy gray mouse. It tugged on the hoop with a soft, gentle might, and lifted Barry's paws in the warm, sunny light. He felt his feet leave the soft, grassy ground, without any fanfare or rumbling sound. "Goodness me," Barry cried with a gasp of surprise as he started to float towards the big blue skies. The bubble was pulling him up, and up like a fizzy drink in a magical cup. He drifted above his own garden shed with a fluffy white cloud bobbing over his head. He looked down below at his little red pot, the place where his bubbly adventure was got. His house and his garden grew smaller and smaller, while he and his bubble grew taller and taller. He wasn't afraid, he was filled with delight. What a wonderful, marvelous, beautiful sight. He was flying, a bear in a bubble, so high, a new kind of birdie up in the sky. He held on tight to his hoop, his bubbly balloon, as he floated along on a fine afternoon. "Hello, Mr. Crow!" Barry cheerfully called to a bird who was not feeling frightened at all. The crow cawed right back with a curious stare, at the sight of a bubble that held a whole bear. Barry waved a big paw at the squirrels in the trees, who chattered and squeaked as they swayed in the breeze. He was higher than treetops, higher than hills, his heart full of joy and adventurous thrills. This was much more than the dream he had planned, to be flying so high over his lovely land. The world was his playground, the sky was his friend, on an adventure that he wished would not end. As Barry floated serenely along, humming a happy, adventurous song, he saw the most wonderful things in the air, a magical world for a traveling bear. He saw fluffy white clouds that were shaped like his brunch, a big stack of pancakes he wanted to munch. He saw little clouds shaped like teapots and toast, the things that a breakfast-time bear loves the most. A family of sparrows, all smiley and sweet, flew right beside him and chirped a tweet-tweet. They danced in the air with a flutter and dip, before giving Barry a friendly wingtip. But soon he could see his house far below, and he knew it was time that he really should go. "How do I get down?" he thought with a scratch. "I need a good plan that is easy to catch." Then, an idea popped into his head. "I'll use smaller bubbles to land soft instead." He dipped a paw into the hoop's gooey rim, and blew a small bubble, right on a whim. He blew out a string of them, 1, 2, and 3, his clever new parachutes, bubbly and free. They slowed him right down with a soft, gentle, a perfect descent. He could not go amiss. He floated down gently, a bear from the blue, with his parachute bubbles all shiny and new. He landed as softly as one feather flake right in the middle of his favorite mud cake. He sat down with a giggle and squish, fulfilling his adventurous, downward-bound wish. He was safe on the ground, his adventure was done, he had flown to the clouds and had oodles of fun. His giant bubble finally gave a soft and rained, gentle honey drops, plip plip plop. Barry stood up, looking proud and so grand, the bravest young bubble bear in all the land. He didn't quite make the world's biggest bubble, but he'd saved himself from a whole lot of trouble. He felt very proud of his glorious flight, and his heart was all shiny and happy and bright. He went to his kitchen and fetched a big spoon and a pot of fresh honey to eat in the noon. He rewarded himself for his wonderful try, for having the courage to float to the sky. And Barry the bear learned a great thing that day. Trying new things in a fun, silly way can lift you to places so wondrous and new, and make all your bravest and best dreams come true.